Right. So, a fairly famous movie has dropped in the past couple of days, and it has been on my mind, to say the least. Avengers Endgame. Probably one of the most anticipated films of the 21st century. Endgame is, you know what Endgame is, culmination of 22 films, blah blah blah. Needless to say, fans are loving it. They are screaming in the streets. They are reacting in some of the strongest ways that I didn't even realize anyone could react to a film. And, you know, there's good reason for it. Infinity War was incredibly strong. It was a terrific film as far as I'm concerned. It really balanced a lot of the characters really well and, you know, introduced some really powerful themes and really explored a lot of interesting ideas whilst also being a very entertaining piece of cinema that a lot of people obviously really enjoyed. It was nothing short of incredible. But for me, I went into Endgame really anticipating it. Like, I was ready for another great film. For me, the Russo brothers had directed some really terrific films already. I loved... Well, Winter Soldier was pretty good, but I loved Civil War. I thought that was really brilliant, the way it broke up the philosophy of the two characters of America and American Man and Iron Civil and whatever, and really push them together and ask the audience to consider both sides. And I really loved Infinity War. I know these were the same writers that had been working on Captain America and, you know, the wider Marvel universe since the first Captain America movie back in, I want to say, 2011. I really felt like they would have really done the same thing. Like, they would have really delivered this powerful thematic piece of entertainment once again with Endgame that really respected the audiences and respected the characters and delivered just another breathtakingly good piece of Marvel cinema, because a lot of it to me feels a bit dry, but what they were able to do, they were able to sort of make the superhero, let's say, formula feel a lot grander, a lot more epic, and a lot more thematically important. All this to say, I was really looking forward to Endgame. However, and as the title implies, I just couldn't enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, there was some incredible stuff in Endgame. I liked a lot of the start where, you know, Tony Stark and Captain America first encountered each other and they really came to heads, because that was the first time they'd seen each other since Civil War. So they really attacked each other, and it felt like a really powerful consequence of what had happened. It really pushed the characters and their drives and their motivations, and seeing where Tony Stark ended up after that, it was really quite an affecting moment, and all, you know, sprinkled out through the film. I loved the way Thor's character was kind of, maybe there were times where he was a bit considered a joke, but I liked the way his character sort of reacted to what he perceived as his own failure. Like, he, you know, as Thanos puts it,
should have gone for the head.
But, you know, he didn't, and obviously it's not his fault. He didn't snap the gauntlet and wipe out half of humanity, but you know, he feels really responsible for it. He feels he could have prevented it. And so I like the way they kind of did that. I liked the way that I loved when Captain America got Mjolnir. That was nothing but incredible, like seeing him wielding the shield and the hammer. It was a great payoff to Age of Ultron. I loved some of the emotional moments we kind of got between characters like, you know, Tony Stark seeing his father. And, you know, I'm really struggling to think up things I love, and maybe that's because I've only seen the film the one time, because I feel like the reason a lot of the film, to me at least, didn't quite land, or maybe wasn't very memorable to me, was that I was very distracted for the entire film, because all I could think about was this mind-bogglingly big plot hole. So, as far as I can tell, and I'd love someone to be able to tell me that actually isn't a plot hole. You've picked up the wrong information somewhere, or, you know, there's this tiny little line here that, you know, completely nullifies what you said. But it's all I could think about during the movie. It was this gaping plot hole I felt was not only unaddressed, but they sort of addressed it in a way, but then their addressal of it broke the movie even more, and totally changed all the emotional impact for me. So there's that scene where Ant-Man sort of tells the other characters and the audience how many times they can go into the past. Like he's like, we've got enough of these magic Pym particles to go back, one test run, 2 test runs, and then 1 round trip. And then he presses 1 and it goes, psh, psh, and he goes, oh, whoops, now we've only got 2. My bad. It's kind of played for a laugh, but that sort of sets up the whole tension of the movie. It's like, well, we've only got, so many cracks at this, and if we get it wrong, then everything's stuffed, so we've got to really carefully consider it. So they spend some time trying to figure out where all the Infinity Stones are. They sit down and they're like, well, there's this moment where there are 3 in New York at the same time, conveniently, and they really spend their time thinking about it. They send off all the Avengers, for whatever reason, go at the exact same time as each other, even though it's time travel and it doesn't matter what time they leave. It only matters what time they get there. They all go at the exact same time, and it's at these moments where if they stuff up, they really stuff up. Like, it is because of the time they go back that all the rest of the tension comes into the movie. If they hadn't gone back, if it hadn't been blue bald lady who went back to 2014 to get the Power Stone, her Bluetooth hookup wouldn't have hit the other nebula, and Thanos never would have seen the memory that told him that he succeeds with the Infinity Stones. And so he uses that as inspiration to go back to the future and try and do it again. So he wouldn't have done that, and they wouldn't have, if it hadn't been that specific moment where they had Loki with the Tesseract. They might not have lost. Like, Loki might not have gotten the stone. Might not have gotten the Tesseract again, because he gets it the second time, forcing them to go back once more into the past and have to steal more Pym particles. It all felt really... It was this very specific moment in time. And what I just brought up, how they go back to steal more Pym particles, is actually my problem with the movie. Because the moment where Ant-Man goes, oh, we've got, 3 trips or what have you, and there's 1 round trip, so we've got to be bloody careful. I thought, well, why don't you just go back? And presumably there was, once a time where Hank Pym left out some recipe for his... I assume there'd be a recipe for those Pym particles or something. And we saw it in the movie. There was a moment where he left out like 20 canisters or something. You'd think that that Tony Stark, being so bloody careful, he's like, we have to get this exactly right, because I will not lose my daughter. I will not lose my wife. We have to nail this, all right? We're going to get this exactly right, because we stuff up time travel. Everything's done for. Yet he never thinks to go back and steal a recipe for the Pym particles, or to steal, to just like go back to Hank Pym's house, once a day for like 10 years or something, and just steal every Pym particle he has. And the Hank Pym of that universe would be like, bloody hell, that's annoying. And he'd just make more. He'd go, where are all my Pym particles going? And that'd be annoying. Or even if they went back and got Hank Pym and brought him to the future, because we know that's possible because Thanos did it. He came back to the future through, they shrunk down his ship and put it in Nebula's pocket or what have you. I can't remember exactly how they did it, but he came back. So when you really consider that as a solution, let's go back and get infinite Pym particles, suddenly you're thinking, well, they didn't have to get the Tesseract at this exact specific moment, instead of going to the specific moment, because they went there to maximize their usage of the Pym particles. They went there to, because there were 3 in New York at the same time, so they went, all right, let's all go back to this exact time. They could have, from the start, sent Ant-Man, Paul Rudd's character, Scott Lang, they could have sent him. And they had all the time in the world, mind you. There was no threat in the future. There was just, it was pretty crappy that they lost all their mates or what have you, but there was all the time in the world. They could have sent him individually to separate moments where these stones were entirely unguarded. Like, let's not forget that there's, in the start of, I want to say, Captain America, there's the Argus Filch guy, the Harry Potter dude, is protecting the space. The Tesseract is sitting in a wall in a church, and Red Skull gets it out. Well, presumably it was sitting there for a while before then. So why not just send, Scott Lang back to get it then? This is acting on the fact that we have infinite pin particles. So he goes back and gets that. And he comes back and he goes, terrific. They go, terrific. We've got one. Let's carefully plan out the rest of them. They mentioned the ether, and Thor's like, yo, that was hanging out in the space planet, and then it turned into goop or whatever, and Asgard, and turn it back or whatever. So they could have gone, all right, Thor, you know where it was. We're going to send you back to because presumably it was sitting in this stone cathedral you see in the dark Thor movie that no one remembers. You could just go back to this while it's sitting there alone for hundreds of thousands of years or what have you, and you could just grab it. Right? You could just grab it. Except for the Soul Stone, I can think of a lot of solutions. I don't know about the Soul Stone exactly. Okay, I've got it. This is kind of dark. All right, I've got it. Find a family on Earth, a husband and a wife, presumably. One of which is... I don't mean to make this a joke, but it's just such an absurd and dark solution. One of which is dying from cancer. Tell them the stakes and say your sacrifice might literally save the universe, because presumably they go to Red Skull and Vormir, and he goes, we need a sacrifice to appease the Solarstone gods, and so they go to some couple on Earth, and they go, all right, you guys really love each other, but she's gonna die in 6 months 2 weeks or what have you, so can you just come here and pitch her off this cliff? And it's going to be quite heartbreaking for you, but she was going to die anyway. So we'll get this Soul Stone, and then we can bring back everyone else. And maybe it won't be quite as fair for you, but as far as values go, as far as sacrifices go, that seems like a very logical one to make. And I'm sure if you just kept searching, you'd find a couple of people who'd be totally willing. If you just put it out on TV, hey, listen, it's us, the Avengers, and we've got a way to save the universe. We just need this. People would be like, what? But they'd definitely get calls. Hey, we're willing to do this if it means. Okay, what I'm what I'm saying is there are solutions. There didn't need to be this whole, CGI final encounter where Thanos comes back, and instead of being this was another problem I had with the movie, instead of being this really awesomely fleshed out character that he was in Infinity War, he's just like, I'm gonna kill everyone because I'm generic Marvel villain number 22. He didn't have to come back at all. They could have really thought it out properly. There's a lot of these emotional moments later in the movie where, Iron Man dies, and you really think about it, he didn't have to die. Like, I think it was really emotionally resonant when he did. Like, it's a really touching moment. But when you think about how pointless the moment is, and you think about, well, that's fundamentally in the script. And so that means it was the way the story was written. It just feels really contrived to me, the way they go, all right, so let's have this really specific set of parameters. We can only go back this amount of times or whatever, and it's inherently baked into the script is this huge movie-breaking set of constraints, and from that, there's all these really, to me, contrived emotional moments, like Thor seeing his mum, and then that risking, like, if he had gotten stuck with her and everything, that risks the fate of the universe. If he decides to go, stuff it, I want to change time and do this, that risks everything. Instead, you send him back to that time where it's in the cave, and you just get it then, and there's absolutely no drama. When Captain America goes back, and then, they lose the Space Stone to Loki, and presumably and remember, at this point, Loki was still a murderous, raving lunatic. They didn't have to contrive this really weird situation where he gets that. They could have just sent Ant-Man back in the first place to steal it from S.H.I.E.L.D. And it really, really breaks the film for me. Really, like, a lot. Like, I just can barely think of it without just this huge huff of disappointment, because all I can think of is, like, it feels like the writers and directors, and I'm fully willing to be proven wrong on this, were more interested in delivering, big fan moments, which I'm sure have their place, Like seeing Captain America with the hammer was a really good fan moment. That's entirely what it was, a fan moment. But the way they got there just didn't feel organic at all. It felt really contrived. It felt like, you know, this will get the fans frothing because they can't think logically and figure. I know that's a bit insulting to say, but the movie just, it doesn't add up. A and B, like 1 and 2 somehow equals 5 in this movie. 5 being the most awesome thing you could possibly think of, and 1 and 2 being logic. Like it just doesn't quite add up for me. Like, why wouldn't Tony Stark have thought this through? Because he's being so careful. I don't know. That's how I see the movie at this point. That's what I'm really struggling to sort of rectify with enjoying the film as a piece of cinema. It just doesn't work for me because I just can't help but think critically about what should be the event film that everyone is going and seeing, and everyone I see in person are just like, what do you think of Avengers? Did you love it? Oh my gosh, Captain America's an old man, and that doesn't actually make sense if you really think about it because of the way time travel works. How is he still there in their future, but he's got an alternate timeline in the past? And didn't you love the movie? And all you can see online are all these people just being like, the movie was amazing, you know, so emotional and heartfelt and everything. And all I can think of is, well, that insultingly contrived. All those moments to me are just, it's like this nonsensical logic that somehow I don't know. So I pose a bit of a question to you. I've brought up a couple of examples, but when do you think is the exact precise, or maybe not exactly precise, but where do you think a line is sort of that plot holes break a movie? Like there are plot holes in movies that we ignore, and there are plot holes in movies that, like I'm showing here for me, completely ruin the movie for me. And I'm sure that you can think of an example too of plot holes completely destroying a movie for you. So I'm just wondering, where do you find that exact area where a plot hole's okay? I personally think it's somewhere between where audiences can think of a way for it to make sense and where it doesn't fundamentally break the movie. So if it's like a plot hole, like, you know, no one ever goes to the toilet in a movie, it's like the audience is like, oh well, that doesn't A, affect the movie at all, and B, they can find time outside of the camera. Like, the camera doesn't follow everyone 24/7, but even if it is, like, it doesn't fundamentally affect the movie. But in other films, you know, like I've just described in Endgame, it fundamentally affects the movie that they didn't just get infinite Pym particles. And I feel like I've really objectively explained that. Like, it really, all the tension is fake. And it really upsets me because I really wanted to love this film. I really want to love this film. And if anyone can help me to do so much, if anyone can help me to love the film, please do it. Explain to me why I'm wrong. Please. I want to be wrong. I don't wake up in the morning and think, geez, I can't wait to hate another thing. I love Infinity War. I thought it was terrific. But this, I struggled. So yeah, this isn't a comeback for Jay Grizzle at all. I will make videos when I'm inspired to make videos, and I'm still working on recording my book. Okay, bye. Thank you.